Cathaoirleach, I want us to look at a few figures. 175 is the number of days that the Debenhams workers have been on strike. 175 million is the amount that was paid to KPMG to wind down the Anglo-Irish Bank by this state. 11 million is the value of the stock inside Debenhams. 11 million is what it would take to pay proper redundancy to the 1,000 workers and their families, the 2 weeks that were negotiated and bargained for. 11 million also happens to be the fee that was paid to KPMG to advise the government on the National Broadband Plan, a fiasco that this state is paying 6 times the cost for and which we will never own. And I want to bring those figures together to illustrate to everybody, and in particular the leaders of this government, that what you are doing in terms of your treatment of the Debenhams workers is disgraceful, it's unacceptable. I walked behind what looked like an army of ordinary working class women towards the Fianna Fáil headquarters this morning where they were protesting. And when I was talking to them and telling them how it looked, how shameful it looked for this state to be overseeing these 175 days of their struggle without getting justice, and said to them, "You're just ordinary women," they said, "No, we have become extraordinary people." And when you read the article in the Irish Times where Jane Crowe, the chief shop steward, sat in a cell, having been arrested after occupying Henry Street, with a bed and a hole in the floor for a toilet, and she thought, how has it come to this? I'm asking you, Minister, how has it come to this? When this state can have no end of largesse to cough out to companies like KPMG for failures indeed. They were supposed to have overseen the accounts of the AIB and Irish Nationwide and failed to alert us before the bank bailout that there was a problem. Why is it that this state have no end of largesse to treat those big companies, those conglomerates in this way, but they cannot find it to say, hold up their hands and say, we failed to implement the terms of Duffy Cahill, we failed to give those workers a mechanism whereby they could receive justice, and that the bargained and hard-won rights that they fought for the years and years of service they gave, is being thrown back at them. And it's 5 days now that the workers in Waterford are occupying their store. Last night, an official from KPMG walked into them and more or less said, what would it take to settle this? And they said, negotiate with us. And they said back, KPMG said, no way. This state is the best customer of KPMG. Here's the way to settle it. Tell them to sit down and negotiate, and tell them that the state will step aside in its ability to be able to collect the insolvency money, that it will take one step sideways and allow the workers to have first preference as a creditor, because that's what should have happened under Duffy Cahill. The state failed to legislate. You, Minister, are now part of that government, and how can you sit there and say that it is not possible to look after 1,000 workers on their families, while it's possible to throw largesse of the state at the big conglomerates? Which side are you on?
Thank you, Deputy.
On the side of every worker in this country, and it's critically important to this country, in my mind, that our partnership process, our model of actually working with unions, working with employers, working with all the various different interests, is actually critical. It is we are a social democratic partnership model, in my mind, is the strength of our country and vital for our country. And it starts first and foremost, if there's one first priority, it is social justice and rights. And those rights are preserved, in my mind, when actually you have law, when actually the rights of the workers are protected in law, so that employers are not able to exploit, which would happen in the absence of that legal system and that outlook in a country. So we do have to abide by the law. And the role of this House, if there is deficiencies in the law in protecting workers, then of course we would look and see, do we need to amend legislation? Do we need to strengthen law? Do we need to provide further funds? But if we went another way where we ignored the law and even as hard and as cruel and as significant are the circumstances of workers in any one situation, including in this case in the Debenhams workers case, yes, you want to do everything you can, but what you can't do is start going outside the law, because once you do that, some of the protections that exist in the law are lost, and that actually undermines and weakens workers' rights. So this government is committed to doing whatever it can within the law. The liquidation is proceeding under the supervision of the High Court, and once it's in that High Court process, we cannot directly interfere. Under the Companies Act, a liquidator is under statutory duty to realise and distribute the assets of an insolvent company prescribed by law. State creditors, including revenue, social welfare, local authority rates, their legal frameworks have to be respected. We do not have the discretion to forego debts owned by the state to a particular company, but at the same time we do guarantee statutory employment's right to the workers of Debenhams, and if a company is unable to pay those statutory redundancy, then the state will step in. And so the first case, it's the company which has to pursue all possible avenues to provide that its statutory obligations are honoured and met. The Department of Social Employment Affairs and Social Protection expect to receive claims on behalf of the former employees of Debenhams under two separate schemes, the redundancy payment schemes and the insolvency payment schemes. That department estimates that between the two schemes there will be circa about 1,750 claims, with some 300 claims arriving per week, and it might take 3 or 4 weeks for all the claims to be submitted. And as of the 18th of September, the Department has received 600 claims under the redundancy payment scheme and 646 under the insolvency payment scheme. Deputy, we all, on this side, on that side, and every side of this House, I believe that actually it's important to protect and meet workers' rights. But we cannot do that outside the law. And where we need to change the law, this government in the programme for government has committed to review the various pieces of legislation in this area, and that we will certainly commit to do.
Well, I'm impressed that you started off your speech by saying that your first priority is social justice and rights. I wouldn't expect anything else from the leader of the Green Party, and you finished with more or less the same sentiment. But in between, you read out some civil service claptrap that makes no sense to me. I don't think you understood it. And do you expect 1,000 workers and their families to understand it, when we know that there is stock in those stores which those workers are protecting worth the same value of their redundancy payment? Now, I'm asking you again, which side are you on? If it's social justice and social rights and the law hasn't provided for it, then the law is an ass, and your government can actually sit down with KPMG reminding you that you're their best customer. You pay them out millions for every other project that you want to engage in, so they must listen to you. Tell them to negotiate with the workers, and that this state will step aside in terms of what it's owed as a creditor and allow the workers to be first creditor, because this state failed to implement the Duffy-Cahill report. Now you're making a promise to do it. Great, do it. But it will be too late for the Debenhams workers, so you need to make a special case. You can do somersaults for vested interests in this country, do somersaults for the workers in this country. There are 1,000 of them and their families, and they have to be looked after.
I read those details out, which was given by the Public Service, because I wanted to let people know what the facts of what people are entitled to under the law. With regard to the Duffy-Cahill report, the government, as I said, is looking to implement a whole series of measures and are reviewing whether the current legal provisions surrounding collective redundancies and the liquidation of the companies protect the workers' rights effectively, reviewing the Companies Act 2014 with the view to addressing the practice of trading entities splitting their operations between trading and property. I know that's more the Cleary's case, but it will have results between where any trading company is trying to separate out. We will examine the legal provision that pertains to any sale of a connected party following the insolvency of a company, including who can object and allow grounds of it. Recently, I understand the Irish Congress of Trade Unions allowed two further proposals that it believes would assist workers where a collective agreement was in place. But this government is saying that it's committed to ensuring those proposals are considered, and this will meaningfully involve engagement with all stakeholders. But what we can't do is say to an auditor, because we're working with them on some other line of business, to say, we won't pay you or we won't use you unless you treat stock in a certain way. That would be completely outside the law, and in the long run would undermine the strength of workers when it came to the need for legal protection in any such instance.